So all the ways that we're constricted in our bodies, our emotions, our ideas of ourselves that have come from the past experiences of receiving and living in conditional love and not being fully seen, fully appreciated, fully accepted, the substances, psychedelic substances, along with meditation, are two amazing vehicles to free us from those patterns that were maybe once functional but are no longer functional for us. And taking us out of being stuck in our past and ideas of what we might be in the future. And I'll be more explicit about how these substances and meditation does this today here. We've all had experiences in our lives, each of us different experiences of being shamed or being not fully accepted or being told you're good if you do this and you're bad if you do that, and being under all kinds of judgment. I remember, I'll tell you a couple things from my life, and if you want to share or just think about experiences in your life. Something that just came up for me about a month ago when I took a psychedelic. I had remembered that when I was about 5, my mother took me, I grew up in Philadelphia, and she took me shopping downtown to the big department store. It was called Gimbel's. It's sort of like the Macy's of Philadelphia, downtown. We didn't have suburban malls at that time, of course. And there was a huge sale on linens, bed linens, and the women there were like, they were like fighting for these sheets on sale, and they were grabbing and pulling, and it was like a madhouse to me. I'm 5 years old, and I cry a lot as I get touched. So, I forgot my tissues. There's some right on the table. So I got separated from my mother, and I couldn't find her, so I panicked, and I'm looking trying to find her. And I remembered that incident, but what I didn't know was how much I was carrying that in my body, and it was only a month ago or so. It came up during an LSD experience I was having, and I relived it, and I could feel all the panic and I was actually acting it out. It surprised me because I'd done 1,000 experiences of LSD, and this never came up before. And so it surprised me, and it was also a release. It was like getting in touch with how I've been contracting and holding that in my body all these years, and being able to feel it and re-experience it and just let it be in a space of acceptance, allowed that to kind of clear out of my body. So it's amazing how much we hold in our body of all kinds, doing like myofascial release and other body work is also a means of releasing that. So think about in your life, what kinds of things may have been traumatic for you or difficult, and where what happens is we begin to form a pattern of reacting, so how did that manifest for me? Was it that I was afraid to go places, or it could have manifested in different ways, a sort of pattern of limited behavior because of this anxious, difficult moment. And then when I was in, I think you like stories, so it's not all about me, but when I was in grade school, 5th grade, we had an assembly, which means we took 2 classes came together, and we opened up a big room, and there was some kind of show going on. And I was a very reserved kind of, introverted child. But for some reason that day I got really into this event, and I started clapping and, being really boisterous. And then I felt something on my shoulder. Of course, the teacher, she pulls me out of class and reprimands me and tells me, we don't, this is not the way we act. We should sit with our hands folded on the desk, And I'm sure you've had things like that happen for you. And these things create patterns. I'm a good boy if I sit, I'm not a good boy if I'm, the one chance I had to be wild, it really got quashed. And so each of us have formed an idea of how we should be, rather than really being open to all the possibilities of who we really are. And we don't realize that there are other possibilities. And then when I was in 8th grade, 9th grade, I failed Latin in 8th grade. I couldn't stand all these declensions, and memorizing and all. I just couldn't do it. So I took geometry in the summer. And it was amazing to me. And I was amazed at how, starting with one definition, 2 lines are lines that never meet, I think is the original proposition, and all geometry is created out of that assumption. And but then later in, I don't know whether it's 19th century or when, they realized that there could be other geometries. What if you defined 2 parallel lines as lines that meet in infinity instead of never meeting? Well, a whole other geometry is developed out of that. And I'm saying this because we don't realize that we have developed certain ideas about who we are, definitions of what's good and bad and right and wrong, and not realizing that there are all kinds of possibilities, and that we're stuck both individually in our own presuppositions about who we are, and we're also stuck as a society. I was fortunate to take a course in culture and personality in college, and really studying how different cultures have different personalities and different ways that they look at the world, and which have their own limitations. Then I came across a book called Winesburg, Ohio, which was written about 100 years ago. It's a book of short stories by a man named Sherwood Anderson. Probably no one's ever heard of him.
Right.
Have you really? Oh, okay. Great. And what really struck me about that book is he says this is a book of short stories, and he gives this introduction where he says there are lots of truths kind of floating around in the world. There's the truth of fidelity, the truth of sincerity, the truth of honesty, various truths. And what happens is, he says, a person kind of gloms onto one truth and makes it their truth and makes it their standard, and they live by that truth. And he says, when that happens, the person becomes a caricature. And he said, these are stories about these caricatures who adopted different truths. So when all that I'm saying so far is about some kind of talking about how we adopt a certain way of looking at the world and believing what we believe about ourselves that can be very limited because they're based on experiences of conditional love, of being accepted for being a certain way, but not accepted for many other aspects of who we are. And I'd even go so far to say that we're all under a spell. Each of us is under a spell individually and collectively based on this. And that we're all and the spell comes about because of these beliefs about how we should be that we get from others, and then we take them on and adopt them for ourselves. I had a client just a couple days ago. he's in New York, and we had a therapy session. He said, this is what he said: I want to be in a safe space where I don't have to justify myself, where I can be safe to feel what I feel. It's not unusual. A lot of us feel that way. And I believe that for all of us, our greatest longing is to experience unconditional acceptance, to feel totally accepted for who we are. And I'm going to talk about how we can experience that. And we seek that out from other people. You know, we seek a partner, maybe a marriage partner, or someone, a relationship partner, and kind of think, well, maybe in here I'll find this total acceptance. But usually we don't, because everybody's looking for that and nobody's experienced it themselves. So there's a certain degree of love and acceptance, but it's not as complete and as full as we would like. And my feeling also, my belief is that all of a person's emotional, psychological struggles, anxieties, depression, all the things we define as, quote, mental illness, which I don't believe in that term, but all the diagnostic categories, or at least most of them, come from one source, and it's a lack of experience in unconditional love. And when we experience unconditional love, those effects of the past begin to melt away. And I'll describe that more specifically. This interesting book, if you're interested in that subject, it's called The Eden Project: In Search of the Magical Other. It's by a Jungian therapist, and he talks about how we're looking from other people for this unconditional love, and how we're projecting onto them this ideal that we want, and how to take back that projection and become whole and find it within ourselves. So it's here if you want to look later at it. And you want to take a picture or something?
I just wrote it down.
Wrote it down. Okay. So the way in which our society, particularly that we're in this trance, or in this, what did I call it?
Spell.
What is it?
Spell. Spell?
Spell, thank you. Yeah, and spell is particularly in terms of living in a binary world. We live in a dualistic world where, which is a reflection of this conditional love that we experience. It's an expression of that, a world where there's good and bad, there's right and wrong. Everything is binary in this world. Even our computers are binary. You know more about that. But now we're beginning to develop quantum computing, which is not binary. We're coming into a new way of being, even in what we create in technology. So we're caught up in this realm of win, lose, good, bad, success, failure, and this affects us day to day. We think about things that way. Oh, I didn't do this so good. I did that, you know. And we live in a world of subject-object. It's another form of this duality. I'm a subject, you're an object, and things are objectified. And we're oriented, we live in the past and the future. We don't live in the present in terms of our personality, in terms of in terms of how I define myself, my personal self. I'm caught up in how the past has affected me, and what I'm makes me look for certain things, expect certain things. Oh, I can't trust that person because this happened to me. And we're looking to improve ourselves, to get somewhere to a better place than we're in now. So we're not in the present, just conscious and being in the present. We're trying to get better, and we're affected by how we think we're not good enough. So we're striving and we're insecure. Am I painting an overly bad picture? And we live in a world of beliefs and superstitions. So, and we're looking for this completeness, this sense of being accepted and allowed to be. And where are we going to find it? I had one experience when I was in Yosemite some years ago. I was rock climbing at the higher, not higher up like height, but I'd driven up to a higher meadow, and there were some rocks, and I was sitting on the rocks in the sun, and I heard these words: "You're loved, you're accepted, you're welcome here." It's the only time in taking a substance like LSD I ever heard words, and they were, and so it was a kind of inkling, beginning of feeling of something about being accepted that way. I could see. And then I had another experience in terms of been talking about winning and losing and striving to be better. I took LSD once, and I had an experience of, it was like winning everything. Did I tell you about that? It was like wherever I turned my attention, it was coming into this archetype of winning. Wherever I turned my attention, I just hit the home run that won the World Series, or I just struck out, pitched a perfect game in the World Series, or I won the presidency, or it's like wherever I turned my attention, I won whatever accolade you could win, Oscar, or whatever. And it was like an archetype. It was like a certain realm of consciousness of winning. And so that helped me a little bit to feel like, well, I won everything. I don't have to be so concerned about, striving and accomplishing. But these are kind of inklings of a sense of well-being beyond having to compete. So where do we find it in some kind of real, lasting way? And in so many traditions around the world, there's a story of the prodigal son or the prodigal daughter. Please excuse me. Leaving out daughters too. That a person seeking to find their fortune or to find whatever they're seeking, and in this case I'm saying it's really underneath it all unconditional love, and traveling all over trying to find it, and finally coming back home and finding it was right there to begin with. That maybe they needed to go out and realize it wasn't somewhere else, but it's right there. And what does that mean? Well, it's about coming home to oneself, I would say. And one way to understand that is that there's another way of being, and there's another way of knowing. I've tried to say that, with different geometries and these different examples, that this way that we've created of dualistic awareness, subject and object, win and lose, zero-sum games, is only one sort of realm that we've fallen into, and we think that's it, that's reality. And from that reality, it's not possible to experience unconditional love, because by very definition, it doesn't exist. Everything is divided. so to experience unconditional love, the fullness of our being, we have to open to the possibility that there's another realm that's distinct from the realm of the personal self that I've grown up in this world. That's not about subject and object. It's not about beliefs. It's not knowing, not believing, but it's knowing directly. I can't read my writing because I got tears in my eyes. It's non-conceptual. The subject-object, the dualistic is the world of concepts. But there's another realm that's free of concepts. And it's not caught up in the past and future, but it's experiencing in the now. So the question might next be, well, how do we experience? How do we know this? How do we come into this other way of being? And how do we come into now being instead of being in the past, affected by the past, and striving to be something other than what is now? How do we live in just the truth of what is, rather than what we would like it to be, or we imagine would be better? Well, fortunately, there is a way of being that is always in the now. And surprisingly, maybe to you, that way of being is in our sensing. Our senses are always taking place now. Listening is happening now. Seeing is happening now. Smelling, taste, all the senses, the proprioceptive sense, if you turn your attention to it, you can feel what it feels like in your body. Maybe you might start out physically feeling the muscles and the tightness and so on, or the looseness of the good feeling in your body. And then you might more subtly get more aware of energy processes in your body. And that's always happening now. And so in order to live free of binary and duality and free of past and future, all we really need to do, we don't have to acquire anything, we don't have to attain anything. It's the opposite of attaining. There's nothing to attain, there's nothing missing. It's simply turning our attention to sensing. Now that may seem, sensing, can that really make that much of a difference? And sensory awareness has gotten a bad rap throughout history. In Middle East, people wear these. The women wear these. You can't see their face, you can't see their body. Like sensory awareness through Christendom, through Middle Eastern religions, has been like that's going to sensory awareness is going to kind of. It's sinful, is going to take us, is going to lose our stability, and we're just going to be taken over and lost in the senses. But it's not the senses that's the problem. That's a mistake. Because the senses are neutral. The senses don't go after anything. They're just awareness in the moment. But what happens is the conceptual mind, the personal self, then wants to use what's sensed for its own purpose. So we go into a bakery and we smell this wonderful baked goods and something is so delicious and we want to buy it and eat it. And just one of all kinds of examples of how the personal self, which feels incomplete and feels it needs something. And this is also related to, if you want to talk about physiology, to dopamine, and the dopamine, which we can talk about another time. It's the mind that is appropriating the sensory awareness and try and continually, repeatedly using it for its own purpose that gets us into trouble. It's the mind and the personal self. It's not the senses. The senses are always neutral. There's no judgment. In sensing, you're just feeling. You're feeling energy. You're feeling presence. You feel aliveness. You feel light. You feel. I'm speaking of more subtle kinds of senses. You feel a spacious awareness, and so, in order to come into this and to really fully experience it, we can learn to distinguish between the sensing that happens initially and then how the thinking process and the personal self wants to use it. So if, let's say I'm sensing here and my eyes are open, I see an eagle go by outside. And so my mind is going to create a narrative. Oh, I haven't seen an eagle here before, or this much, and it creates a story, and the story may not be that dramatic that it takes us into some desire for an eagle, but it takes us away from being in the moment into this creation, this narrative. And that's how, and so it's not easy, if we haven't done this before, it's not easy to stay with the sensing. The mind will come in and always repeatedly want to create a story, and sometimes it'll be kind of a neutral story, but it'll still take us off out of the moment, into the past, and last time I saw an eagle was at Eagle River, and I remember I was canoeing, and that was, and we're gone from being here. So it's a practice to learn how to stay here. We all suffer from ADHD or ADD. Everybody, it's not a special, maybe some people have it more than others, but it's not a special diagnostic separate category. We all have attention deficit. And one of the values of meditation is learning to keep our attention focused. There are other things that keep our attention focused. It doesn't have to be meditation, it doesn't have to be psychedelics. The sexual and being sexual can, because it's such an intense and sensory experience, our attention tends to stay there, and as part of the pleasure is being able to focus attention and on sensation. Maybe swimming or long distance running or other kinds of activities that people talk about, flow experiences, athletics and so on. There are many kinds of activities, and music can do that. Music is also another way to come out of subject, object, and conceptual knowing into another kind of knowing. We can learn the capacity to be undistracted and to stay aware in sensing. Most meditation techniques are very preliminary. They're just learning about concentrating. Concentrate on a mantra, concentrate on your breath, watch your thoughts, name your thoughts as they go by. These are subject-object, still in the realm of subject-object to a large degree, and they're concentrated. And they're really preliminary exercises in order to train ourselves to stay focused. But deeper meditation goes beyond that. Deeper meditation is there's no training. There's nothing you're trying to get to. It's just the opposite of trying to get anywhere. It's just there's nothing to do in meditation. you know, and we don't know how we don't know how to do nothing. So it's very strange for us. I remember the first time I meditated, no one was teaching me. I was in college, and I went to a Quaker meeting, a Society of Friends, and no one, they just sat there in silence. No one taught meditation. So I thought, well, okay, I'll think about peace. So I would sit there and say to myself, peace, peace, peace. You know, I thought, I'll make up my own meditation. Well, I liked it. It was very strange the first time, just to sit in silence with, wow, people, it's very bizarre. But I liked it, so I went back, and I did the same. 4 or 5 weeks I did it, and I keep saying peace. And the more I said peace, the more I wanted to feel peaceful and say peace. After a few weeks, I started to see napalm bombs and war scenes and everything the opposite. So I didn't know why was that? And I finally came to the conclusion that it was because I was trying to suppress any negative, any angry thoughts, any difficult things, and just have peace. It was like pushing down all the other feelings I was having, and it's like pushing a ball down in the water, you know, that's filled with air. It wants to pop up back up. And so when we have an intention to try to get somewhere, I was still coming from that dualistic idea that it's not okay just whatever is. I should feel peaceful and trying to get to something else rather than being open to what is. So that was a kind of a teaching for me. And then I went to study with Chogyam Trungpa, who was a well-known Tibetan rascal teacher. And the meditation he taught was to just listen. He had to sit down and he said, just listen. And listen to not only the things you hear, but the space between the things you hear. And to me, it was an introduction to this opening to sensing, but I didn't realize the significance of that. And so then I went on to study, to do mantra meditation and to give people mantras and do this and follow a teacher who was more about self-improvement than self-acceptance for a number of years. It took me a long time to come back to valuing the self-acceptance. No, I'm not sure where I'm going with here. So sensing is always in the now, and there was an interest. There was a man named who wrote a book called Focusing, Gendlin, back a while back. He wrote a book called Focusing that was, he talked about the felt sense, and it was really kind of unique to, it was innovative in psychology, but this is back in the 1960s maybe, 50s, 60s, 70s. And it was very innovative, and it was introducing this idea that he was a therapist, and in therapy, to kind of be with a client and ask the client to focus on their felt sense in the moment. And it was the beginning of, in psychology, to introduce this. Let's see, we have our lights on. We should need to put some lights on. Excuse me. It's getting dark. Oh. More lights. Anyone wants to turn those on behind me?
Would there be a bathroom available around here as well?
Be what?
A bathroom?
Yes, go around the corner and then make a U-turn.
Thank you.
So, both psychedelics and meditation open us to sensing, and psychedelics usually aren't talked about that way. Only people who are experienced in psychedelics and are teaching other people how to use them in therapy and so on tend to talk about psychedelics, or even people in general who are fairly experienced talk about psychedelics as opening us up to a sense of oneness, or as Rosalind Watts, as she talked about, enhancing relationships. Is that right?
Yeah, the connectedness, yeah.
Connectedness. Uh-huh. And so there are different ideas about what do psychedelics do, and they're all accurate in their way. But I don't see anybody talking about that psychedelics open up our sensing awareness. But those of you who have used them might recognize how much they do that. What is it about? Why is music so much used and valued in the research studies when someone's sitting with a person taking a psychedelic, and they're almost always using music as a way to deepen that person's experience. And some people feel that the music kind of drives the experience in the sense that it brings forward emotions and various kinds of experiences depending on what the music is. My sense is it may do that, but that those things would come forward anyway, even without the music, if we're open to a sensing awareness, if we avail ourselves of the sensory awakening that psychedelics brings about. We see that if I look at a sunset here, I think it's gorgeous often. But if I look at it when I've taken a LSD, it's 10 times more impactful. Stan Grof talked about, and I thought the same way, that psychedelics are like microscopes or telescopes. They enhance, they open up our experience many-fold from what they ordinarily are. And one of the major ways they open it up is in terms of sensing. They really bring us into an awareness of sensing. And the same with meditation. Depending on the type of meditation, there are these types of meditation that try to close down sensing. There's a practice in yoga where you close all your eyes, your ears, your breathing, your nose, and everything. My feeling is that it's not the sensing; it's the learning to separate the sensing from the object. Usually, if I'm listening, I'm listening to, there's a motorboat, or there's this, or there's that. We're focused on the object. But if you go deeper into sensing, it's not about the object. It's just experiencing the quality of listening, irrespective of what you hear. If it's proprioceptive, it's feeling into the body. It's learning to be in the feeling and sort of withdraw it from what it is that you're feeling, your proprioceptive feeling. Franklin Merrill Wolff, a really great realized awakened philosopher, wrote a book called The Philosophy of Consciousness Without an Object, that as consciousness as our consciousness opens, we lose a sense of awareness of objects, and consciousness becomes more and more free of objectification, free of concepts, free of and in sensing, that's another point about, and when we're sensing is always changing. it's like sensing's like a verb, so to speak. If I just am in the moment and I'm feeling, I might feel something in my fingers, and then it spreads down to my leg, and then something opens here, and it's a continually it's evolving and changing process. But the mind fixes it and makes it a thing, and tends to focus on what's being sensed, and then kind of makes something of it. It turns it into a noun, into a thing. But in sensing, there are no things, so it's a continually creative, self-creative, self-manifesting process, and it's pretty wonderful. When you open up to it, it's like an unfolding into a deeper and deeper openness and spaciousness. William Blake, in one of his poems, said, when the doors of perception are cleansed, just to paraphrase, because he said a man, I don't want to say a man, a person, we are, we see the world as it is, infinite. When the doors of perception are cleansed. So this is the process of, you might say, of cleansing the doors of perception. And Aldous Huxley wrote a book called The Doors of Perception, based on Blake's poem. So both psychedelics and meditation take us into this expanded sense of sensing. There's an interesting book I came across maybe last year, from a whole different point of view to start out. These are researchers who are studying the brain process, and they wrote this book, Better in Every Sense. And it says, the new science of sensation can help you reclaim your life. And they're coming at it very differently than I am. And one of the things they're finding is that people who are depressed, and doing brain and research with them, the depression happens when you shut down your senses. And when they teach people to open up to sensory awareness, their depression lifts. That's just a little part of it. And so one other major point I want to make, maybe we'll have time for some questions. So, you know, maybe more than one. There's a common view that meditation is kind of an introverted thing, and it kind of takes you away from the world. And that, you know, the old traditional view has been that this world is an illusion, and it's filled with all kinds of problems and all, and a meditator wants to kind of withdraw from the world and not having to do with it, just go inward and realize themselves as pure consciousness. So I used to kind of have that point of view because it fit for me, because I was very introverted, and you know, I didn't want to have much to do with the world because I was too uncomfortable in the world. So I began to follow this tradition of withdrawal, became a Swami, and you may not know what that is, but we could talk more about it. And thought that I'm just not going to get involved. You know, meditation is about withdrawal from the world. And then I was, I remember being at Columbia. I was doing a talk with two other spiritual leaders or teachers. I think I may have told you about this. It was sponsored by Pir Vilayat Khan, who was a well-known Sufi teacher. He was the one who organized it, had a few hundred people there on the campus of Columbia University. And I was representing Swamis in the Indian tradition. And then there was Rabbi Zalman Schachter, who was a well-known rabbi who also, I found out, was really into psychedelics. Do you know who he is? You know. And me. So I was the first speaker, and I began talking about renouncing from the world and being a Swami. And in the middle of my talk, the rabbi gets up and he says, "This is bullshit." And in front of all these people, you know, and I didn't know what to say, you know. And the Sufis are very much, they're like ecumenical. They embrace all traditions. And so I was like, so Pir Vilayat is trying to say, well, your view is, you know, because in the rabbinical tradition, there's no renunciates. The rabbis are married and they live a, you know, active life in the community, and there's no priests or, you know, or like in the monks in the Catholic Church. So it's very foreign to them. So anyway, I guess it kind of got worked out, and I felt kind of bad about it, but and Zalman Schachter is brilliant. He was my sister's teacher at Temple University. So here I was thinking, you know, I'm going to withdraw from the world, and meditation is taking me out of the world. And then I had a girlfriend. Swamis aren't supposed to have girlfriends, but I had a girlfriend in New York, and she was the associate. Oh, and Pir Vilayat invited me. He his father was a world famous musician, Hazrat Ali Khan, and so he was very much into music, and he invited me to come to their musical event after this workshop at Columbia. And I said, no, I'm going to do my meditations. You know, I declined, you know, these wonderful experiences. And I had a girlfriend who was the associate director on Saturday Night Live. And so she invited me to come to their after parties, or come to the show whenever I wanted to, come to the after parties with the cast members and the guests and all. No. So I missed a lot of good opportunities, you know. But I agree with this rabbi now. I feel that these are ways of avoiding dealing with our really being alive and being involved and participating in the world. And when I shifted to this understanding about sensing and opening up to sensing, it's not, as I said, it's not sensing that's a problem. It's trying to use it because we feel incomplete, and so the last thing, what I was going to say is the last thing here is that sensing in coming into what we sense in the moment, sensing is neutral. It's not judgmental. It's not. It's just. I feel this. It might be something uncomfortable. I have a client that I work with who has this chronic tightness in his chest, and he tries to do all kinds of things to, get past it, avoid it. He'll even go daydreaming and go out of the moment to create some good feelings and to avoid this tension that he's keeping in his chest. It's kind of like me trying to create a sense of peace, and avoiding everything else. But when we let ourselves feel into what's happening now, whether that happening now is me recalling my being lost with my mother and feeling all tight, or whether it's attention, or whatever it is, sensing is about being in the truth of now and letting it be. And since there's no judgment, sensing there's not, you can't put anything but accept. There's no way to reject or judge, or this is what is. This feels tight. This feels happy. This feels I feel anxious now. And in doing that, all these aspects that come forward one after another at different times, my anxiousness, my fear, my whatever it is, meets this awareness that just lets it be, which is non-judgmental, which is the same to me as unconditional love. There's just, in sensing, there's always acceptance. And in that acceptance, all the parts of ourselves at different times that have been judged and criticized and have created tensions and anxieties and all, they come forward. And when they meet that awareness that's allowing its space to be, then they have no any longer basis of continuing. They only stayed stuck or became established in the face of being judged. And to me, it sounds maybe it's very simplistic, and to me it is. That's really the source of all healing. When people in the psychedelic movement talk about the innate healing process, a natural healing process, to me this is what it is. It's simply learning how to be open to feel, to sense what it is. And so for me, it's a total, complete difference from what I was talking about now, like trying to separate yourself from the world and get to some higher awareness. That more inclusive awareness is right here. It's like the prodigal son. It's always been here, and the only reason we don't experience it is we're distracted by thinking something else is where we want to go. We're busy, I'm scheduled on the 8:15 train, and we're just not here. And here is where it's all at. Well, I guess I'll stop here, and I don't like to give a lecture, but so anyone want to any questions or anything that's confusing or not clear, or what more you'd like to know about? And we're gonna take a little break after see a couple questions, take a break, and then we'll do a practice of sensing, and then we'll have some cookies and milk or something.
Some things to sense, yes.
Something for our senses.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you say something about unconsciousness?
Say
What
no.
is the unconscious? The
Yeah.
unconscious.
The unconscious.
Yeah, like for example, those experiences that we have all the time that could be hurtful or whatever, that they repress and go to the
The
unconscious.
experiences we have all the time that could be hurtful.
And they might go to the unconscious
Yeah.
part of us. And then what would be the role of either psychedelics or meditation or both to sort of bring those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was giving some examples of that from my life. This example of when I was with my mother and I got lost and I panicked, and it stayed with me. It was I remembered it as something that happened, but I didn't feel it. And when I took this LSD, I was like looking for, I was taken over by it. So it was in my unconscious, and it was sort of locked into my body, but it became animated and freed. Is that? I recently there's a body worker that I know who does Thai massage. But not if you go here and look for someone who does Thai massage, it's kind of good, pretty good massage. But this guy studied in Thailand with the masters. And guys that were, really very advanced masters. And he told me it was so excruciating. They would go so deep in the massage, it was extremely painful. Well, he's very painful too. If you go to see him, you can be prepared. It's going to hurt. And he did. I went with my friend, and we each did 3 hours a day for 2 days. He really released a lot of things that I've been holding in my body. It's sort of like myofascial massage or body work, but they're kind of gentle and they stay here and they take their time. But he really goes deep. And on our way home from there, it was to go there. It took us a 5-hour drive, and a half-hour drive to go to Marquette, Michigan. He's that good. On our way home, this anger and all these emotions came out unexpectedly, really intense, and it was like a release of all this stuff I'd been holding in my muscles from unconsciously from the past. So whether it's through body work, whether it's through taking psychedelics, brings up these unconscious ways that we've been constricting ourselves, contracting ourselves, or whether it's through this particular way of meditating, of sensing. I'm not sure. There's something more I think you're wanting to.
No, I think.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll take a 5-minute break or so, and then we'll do some practice and stretch your.
And there's some water back there.
Yeah, that's nice. There's water.
Thank you.